Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. I have for you some more Bigfoot stories, and I have some in the can too, coming here soon. But this guy, his name is Jay from Ohio, and he emailed me the other day and had some interesting Bigfoot kind of stories of growing up and family members and things like that. But I'll let him tell you more about these stories that he has and some of the experiences he has had with the Sasquatch genre of encounters and what have you. But anyway, this should be interesting. And Jay, how you doing today?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. Yeah, when we were talking earlier, you kind of started at the beginning how your email was there. A very interesting way to start. Kind of back how you got interested and what have you. If you would just kind of start there and kind of
Sure,
just take us through that progression like you did in the email when we were talking. Cool.
sure. Yeah, sounds good. Um, I grew up in the '70s with my brother. As I said, he was 8 years older than me, and back then we watched a lot of In Search of, and then there was a show called Man, Myths, and Monsters, and In Search of Bigfoot also was on. We would watch that. My brother used to terrorize me of Bigfoot, and I'd be absolutely scared out of my mind watching it. And I was just a boy at the time. So I was in the living room. A few years later, I was 9 years old, and this was in 1979, and it was an evening, and my brother came through the kitchen door, and I was in the living room watching TV, and my dad was in the kitchen, and I overheard my brother. He's pretty traumatized. They were talking about something. I remember my dad laughing, going, "He didn't see anything," and what happened was my brother and his girlfriend, which is now his wife, they were out parking, and they decided to leave to take. My brother had to take her home, and they were driving down the road. And it's the typical Sasquatch story where one crosses the street right in front of the car, and they kept driving, and my brother got to my brother's girlfriend's house to drop her off, and they both talked about it, and they said, "Did you see that?" So the whole time that they drove away, through when the Bigfoot crossed, they didn't say a word to each other. They were both. I remember talking to them, and we talk about this a lot. They both didn't believe what they saw, and they didn't really talk about it until they got to the house, and they both saw it. So it wasn't a gigantic Bigfoot. It was my brother said it was 5 foot tall, if that, was covered in hair. It came across from out of the woods over the street. It turned and looked at them, and it crossed the street into the other side of the woods. And the Bigfoot's when it looked and looked at them, the lights of the car refracted through their eyes, and the eyes looked, like a possum or a cat. It had that glow, but they weren't glowing or doing anything weird. It just the refraction of the light. And like I said, it took off. And my brother I remember hearing him. He was very upset about it, and basically couldn't believe what he saw. So that was '79. Let's fast forward to '93, '94, maybe '95. I was 24, 25 years old. I always had a huge interest in Bigfoot from that on. And as I told you, as a kid driving with my parents in West Virginia, and that I would just gaze out in the woods trying to get a glimpse. And obviously I never saw one. But in '94, '95, I was watching television, and I was with my girlfriend. We were at my house, and on the show, it was called the Hunting and Fishing Show, and it had a man, had the announcer of the show. He was on there, and it had Robert Morgan on there, and he's the legendary Sasquatch hunter. You know, when I mean hunter, I mean he never used firearms. He was maybe a tracker, I should say, more or less. And I remember, if anyone knows Bigfoot, they'll know who I'm talking about. He's the short, bald-headed man with a Fu Manchu. And from the 70s, he was the main character, always looking for Bigfoot. And matter of fact, he directed In Search of Bigfoot. And on a side note, he was also the creator of In Search of. So he was on the Hunting and Fishing Show, and I watched it. I was very intrigued. I was like, man, this is awesome. And next thing I know, they're having a seminar, a Bigfoot seminar in a town below me. And it was in the next couple of days. So me and my girlfriend, we drove off one evening and went to the seminar. And it was a seminar on Bigfoot, and they also had it was a split seminar. They had a seminar on UFOs, and I sat there and I listened to the seminar on Sasquatch, and they had the plaster casts and passing them around and other people were talking about their encounters and that. And I went to the bathroom, and there was the host of the Hunting and Fishing Show, and we started talking. He was really, really cool, and we hit it off. And we started talking, and he goes, well, let me introduce you to Morgan. And because I told him about my story and that, so he introduced me to Morgan, and he loved my girlfriend. My girlfriend was a pretty girl. And, she always opened doors for me as far as getting to know people. So she broke the ice on that, and I met Morgan, and we hit it off very well, too. So a few weeks went by, and I was hooked, and I really wanted to start doing my own Bigfoot research after that. And mind you, this was in the early 90s, mid-90s, and there was no Discovery Bigfoot or Survivor Man Bigfoot, nothing like that. So it was kind of like taboo. You didn't tell a ton of people what you're doing because they really thought you were shot out. But there was a seminar. He was having another seminar, and it was at a local college, and it was on a Saturday. And I went to that by myself, and I went to the seminar, and Morgan was holding it, and it was pretty big. There was a lot of people there. Morgan introduced me to a friend, now my friend. I'll name him as Jim. I'm not going to name his name. So he introduced me to Jim, and Jim had a major encounter in a hunting area that he had, and he wanted to start doing some research, and that's why he went to the seminar, because he wanted to know what happened. So me and Jim hooked up, and we started being trained by Morgan, basically how to get close to the creature, and what the creature was all about, and areas and how to do it. So me and Eric went to his hot spot, and we started. His area was, mind you, again, I'm terrified of the woods, and I'm scared of the dark at this time. I watched a lot of scary movies as a kid. I watched Jason and Freddy and Children of the Corn, so I was absolutely terrified of the dark in the woods. So that was a big hurdle I had to cross just to get near a Bigfoot. I had to go through all that terror. Our area was known for Bigfoot. There had local sightings, and also was near a large, I'm not really going to give my location, but it was near a hot spot of UFOs and weird activity. And again, I wasn't into that, so I was more into the Bigfoot thing, but we were in a local good hot spot. And we started I think it was near fall, we started going out. And we parked alongside the road, and I had to walk through a couple hundred yards of cornfield. And that was spooky in itself. There was no paths, nothing like that. And we'd walk through the cornfield, and then we would enter the woods. Well, I'll make, a lot of research. This was 3 or 4 years of research that we did out in the woods. And I'll cut down a lot of the time there. One night we went in, and we eased ourselves into this. We didn't just go. There was no paths or anything like that. And Eric was good in the woods, and he would guide us through the area and always be able to get us out. And that they were pretty thick. So we would go in at dusk, let nighttime come on us, and then we would hang out and wait for the creature to come by. And we used techniques that Morgan taught us. There's techniques that a lot of them, the tree knocking and things like that, trying to mimic them. We didn't mimic them, and we didn't do much of the tree knocking. But we did announce ourselves each and every time before we would enter the woods. We each had a name that we would holler out. Matter of fact, we would start at the car, holler it out, and as we walked in closer and closer, we would announce ourselves. So, we would build up time after time after time of going in, doing the same thing. And, he has a field research manual out there, and these are the techniques he teaches on that, too. So these aren't a lot of trade secrets. He has a Bigfoot field research manual that you can get. So one night we were at, 20 yards inside the woods, and I heard, it was nighttime, and I heard these tweets, and they were probably another 30 yards, 40 yards below us. Now, these woods would go in flat, and then they would dive down into like a ravine, and then there was a large river that flowed at the bottom. And we never went down that area, but down in that area, I could hear these tweets, and they sound like birds. And I said, and they were whistling. And I said, Eric, what bird makes noise at night like that? I've never heard that before. And he goes, I don't know. I said, well, let's go down there. And he goes, I'm not going down there. That's where they're at. And his experience that scared him so bad, his tree stand was down in that area when he had that howl that people talk about, that loud. He described it as tornado whistle, that it just went on and on. And Brent, I've heard your videos and people talking about the nonstop howling where they don't even take a breath. It's nonstop. And Eric said when he was in his tree stand at dusk that he heard it coming down down towards him, and he heard the howl, and he, like people say, you can feel it. He could feel it inside of him, and he got off his tree stand and left. So that's where we got the hot spot. So that night we left. He didn't want to pursue the bird noises, and he said, if we're going to go down there, I want to go down there in the daytime so I can make sure we can come out. And he goes, I'd rather go down there in the day or before it gets dark, and then when night comes down, we're already down in there, and I'll feel a little more safe. I said, that's cool. So we left, and the next day I'm leaving work, and again, I told you I was laughing about this. That's when cell phones just started coming out, and I had a cell phone, and he called me. I was leaving work. He goes, listen, it was about 4:30, and he said, listen, if we leave now, we can get out there and we'll go down that area. I said, well, that's cool. So I hurried up, got home. He got me, and we drove out there. It was about an hour drive from where we lived. We drove out there. We parked our vehicle. We started. It was dusk, still light, just getting to be that time. And, it was fall. We started this in the fall, like I said. We started walking through the cornfield, announced our names, and we got to the edge of the woods, and then we started down towards the ravine near the river. We got down to the bottom of the ravine. It took about 20 minutes, half an hour to get down there. And I remember this was the night that he had to, he was very adamant about having to go get home. We couldn't stay for too long because he had dinner reservations. I know I was kind of upset because I wanted to stay as long as it took. So he built a fire, and we were always taught to build a fire. And we had a fire going. You know, and I sat, there was a log there. It was kind of a nice little area we sat at. We were sitting there for, I don't know, we were there 45 minutes. And he kept checking his watch. And he's like, man, we got to go soon. And he goes, my wife's going to be upset. I'm like, no, let's just wait. We didn't hear anything. Nothing. Just quiet, nice night. And I don't know, it was a little bit later, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. I heard my left ear, I remember, to my left. I was facing, if we have in the woods, we're facing out. And the river was behind us. And I heard a slight whistle. I remember just barely hearing it. And it was way down there, way down there. And I go, dude, I hear it. And heard it again. And we waited, and it started getting louder. Now, these whistles, they were faint when we heard them. And as I wrote to you, if you put your two fingers, I can't do it, but when people whistle and they put their two fingers in their mouth and they whistle out, and they would be long. It would be a long whistle, and then it would stop. And there was more than one. You could hear them, you know, 2 or 3 whistles, and they started getting closer and closer. and it wasn't till, I don't know, 10 minutes, they were right on top of us. And I mean on top of us, not on above us, but in our face. It was, the whistling was very loud, very, very loud. And they did it, I remember they did it, whatever it was, did a semicircle around us. So they came from the left, they stayed to the left, came in front of us and behind us and to the left of us. Nothing to the right of us. I remember that distinctly. Almost, you know, I watch your videos or watch and listen to your videos where they talk about, you know, they want to try to get you out of their area. So, again, I'm not saying it was a Sasquatch at this time. They were very, very loud, and they would get so close and loud, like they would walk. You could feel them. You couldn't hear them walk, but the whistle was really loud. It'd be in your face, and then the whistle would be maybe 10 feet in front of you. So it'd be in your face, and then 10 feet in front of you, they'd whistle again, really loud and long, drawn-out whistles. And we were so scared, and you talk of that fear. And I told you earlier that my knees were knocking. I grabbed his hand and held his hand. I was like a little boy going down a roller coaster hill. And my knees, I remember my knees were knocking. And you heard about people when they get scared, their knees knocking. I never knew that really happened until then. And I was holding his hand. We were really excited too. I remember we were looking at each other, and we were both scared, but smiling, because we're like, man, we're having an encounter. You know, we're actually hearing something and getting something pretty concrete. And it went on, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, and it stopped. It just completely stopped, and there was nothing. And I remember him going, let's get out of here. And I'm like, no way, I'm not leaving. Because the only way out was straight through the woods. And he goes, we're going. And I remember I buried my face. I was terrified to walk through. I just didn't want them to grab me or whatever it was to grab onto me. and I buried my face in his hoodie behind him, and we walked right out. And we drove home. We're basically beyond ourselves what had happened. And I listened to your recordings, which are awesome, but the people that have seen them, you just can't believe it. You just can't believe it. And again, I can't say it was a Sasquatch. I'm not going to tell you I didn't smell anything. We didn't hear any trees breaking. It wasn't the typical thing, but they were so loud, and the way they surrounded us in a semicircle, and the way it stopped. I remember I called Morgan that night, and I told him what happened. He laughed. He said, "So now you're a believer, huh?" I said, "Absolutely." I told my father. I must call 4 or 5 people because they all knew it. The close people, friends of mine, knew what I was doing and the time I was spending, because we were going out 4 or 5 nights a week, and which was a lot at that time. I mean, that was pretty much our hobby in the evenings and the weekends, and so that was huge. We spent probably 3. I went all over Ohio, actually. And again, Morgan was awesome, and we became close friends. As far as, I wasn't eating dinner with him or anything like that, but we would talk. And he had us helping with his seminars. And we would travel to local areas, different towns around us, and hold the seminars, and which were awesome. I met a lot of cool people, and a lot of people that, I guess basically what I'd say is I could tell if you're lying or not, if you saw something or not. And the stories, so many stories were coming from people that had families. I remember there was a nice family that had two young girls, and, the guy had a wife, and they were having lots of encounters in southern Ohio, and they were telling us about them, and the stories were really, really good. Just people were coming out of their houses to go to these seminars because they were hearing these things and they wanted to know what they were and what they're about. So one time, we talk about me and you were talking about the time that I went down with Morgan, and he was awesome. He would never, you never told him where we were at, because he always was in the belief of don't give up your sight, because you never want to compromise by someone playing with you, and never tell him where your sight was unless, at the last minute you were taking him there. And that night, me and him, he wanted to go with me, and I took him out one night, and he never knew where the site was, because you never wanted to be set up. And now everyone's doing it, so, you really got to be careful where you go. So we went down to my area, the same area that the bird noises were at, and we heard a couple howls, nothing concrete, and he goes, "Is that some of the stuff you hear?" I said, "Yeah." I look back on some of the howls, they could have been owls or coyote. There's a lot of coyote in that area. So again, I'm not going to be concrete on that one, say this was a Sasquatch, but this was a very interesting night for me. And we sat there and talked, and were quiet for a while, and he said, "You know what?" He goes, "Why don't you sit down?" And I sat behind him, and he stood up, and he said, "Well, I want to see if I can get him to come closer, see if I can get any of them out here." And I was like, I remember going, "Yeah, whatever, man, do what you got to do." I didn't say that to him. I loved him, I respected him. But he put his hands together, and he kind of meditated, and I remember him putting his hand out and finger out and point forward, just like if I was going to point to you and say you're out as a umpire. And he pointed forward, and I heard and it stopped. And I was like, okay, that, as I told you, I go, that could be anything. It could be a deer. That could be a squirrel. It wasn't heavy, nothing heavy broke or anything, but I heard footsteps. I definitely heard footsteps. But I was like, what a coincidence. That's really good. That's a great trick you got there for me. And then he went to his right. So with his left hand forward, he pointed, and then to the right, he pointed. and I heard, and it stopped. And about this point in time, I'm pretty much about ready to wet myself. And he looked back at me and he said, "Do you hear them?" And I said, "Well, of course, yeah." And I was pretty shook up. And he goes, "Well, they're afraid to come in." And that's all he said. He looked at me, "They're afraid to come in," and we didn't hear anything after that. There was something definitely in the front and to the right side of us, for sure. It wasn't a coincidence, because when he did it to the right, that's when I about fainted. Because I heard it, and then he said, "Do you hear him?" I said, "Yeah." So that flipped me out pretty good.
I mean, yeah,
I never went back. I don't think we went back to that area for a while. We went down in southern Ohio, a lot of southern Ohio. I've been all over the woods. Teepees, we call them teepees. They're calling them. What's wild is since then I've watched these Bigfoot shows, and they're just now starting to do the things that I was doing in the '90s, and which was cool. That doesn't make me feel like special. I just mean, these are things that he was taught by, which I give great respect to him with this. He was taught by Nino Cochise, and that was Cochise's, I think, great grandson. And Nino Cochise Morgan was very into Indians and the folklore, and he took it very, very seriously. It wasn't just a myth. And he told me about, the Patterson Gimlin films about Nino. I mean, this isn't anything secret. He told us at the seminars that Nino Cochise in the Patterson Gimlin films, Morgan showed him pictures and that, and Nino would say, "Oh, you're foolish." He goes, "Can't you see what's going on here?" And he pointed up into the wooded areas where there was one or two baby Sasquatches up in there. And what he said Patty did, Nino did, Patty came out in front of Gimlin and Patterson, and basically what she was doing is this is what Nino's telling Robert. She was trying to divert those guys away from her children that were in the hills there, and she, like any animal would do or creature would do, to draw attention towards her, not her young ones. And that was his story to Morgan of that video of what happened there. I mean, yeah, it was a great time with them. But I would sit down with my girlfriend later on in life, and now my wife, and we watched that hunting Bigfoot, and now they're knocking on trees and stuff, and we were doing that back then. And another thing is the stick formations that they leave behind. I was taught, I even know about rocks. The rocks are a huge thing for Sasquatch. They like to use rocks. They like to place rocks in certain areas, do certain things with rocks. I don't know what it is with rocks and them, but even the children, he taught me how to look for rocks that children do things with. And I basically, give that one to, for a little secret for mine. But the children like play with rocks. He used to teach me and what to look for. The stick formations like the teepees, where the sticks come out of the large trees. We would find those. Also, I see on the videos and that where the sticks are broken. A lot of those are used for markers. He would teach me and show me that some of these sticks, and you need to look high up, the sticks are broken and twisted. You'll see them twisted. And I didn't see a lot of those, but you would find those. And he said those are a lot of times used for markers. And Brent, one of the huge things that he would always tell me, and I never could get it in my mind, and since watching your videos, my eyes are starting to open, is the size of them. I always looked for people my height. And he'd always say, you need to look higher. You always have to be gazing up higher. And he would tell me, he would show me how they would stand. I remember seeing those stories about how they're on your YouTube, how they stand behind trees and they peekaboo. And they blend in so well with the trees. And he was big on that. He said they'll even stick their hands out, their arms out, and their arm looks like a branch. So they look like they're standing there with a tree and they're a branch. Their arm is a branch. But now that these people are coming forward, seeing 8, 10-foot tall ones, I can't even comprehend that. I couldn't imagine seeing that. And now that I'm thinking about it, I never was looking through the woods correctly. I was always looking at eye level, hoping to see something my height. And, I'm only 5'8", 5'9". So, I'm learning on that. But the things they're doing now are things that we knew of years ago, and it's exciting to see. It's exciting that people are getting closer and closer. I never had an aggressive. He never ever talked about an aggressive one. Never ever heard of that. So, and I believe it. I had never had that. I never heard anyone ever until I watched your videos and a couple other ones that are strays on YouTube. I never knew of a Sasquatch being aggressive, except for those guys in the Sierra Nevada, where the rocks were being thrown down at them. That back in the 1800s. It's the only time I've ever heard of something like that. So.
Yeah. Well, it probably just depends on, the ones you're coming across and maybe what they have near. You come near their children or something, they might get aggressive. And the alpha males are the ones that typically seem to get aggressive mostly. But yeah, I've got quite a few aggressive stories on the channel, and I was telling you about one I had someone sent me the other day where they were on Vancouver Island, and there was howling coming from 3 different sides towards this get together they were having. I'll bring a story out on a separate video, but basically they got closer and howled and came closer and howled, and it scared all these people indoors, and those Sasquatch showed up and ripped the fence, part of the fence off, and shredded it and bent a bicycle and threw it up 120 feet in the air, and it's still in that tree, they said, and trashed all kinds of things. But I don't know why, other than maybe maybe there was something more going on there, because the lady, he overheard the lady who owned the house say, of all nights, I hope she didn't want this to happen again, she said, and of all nights. And they ended up moving from there. But and yeah, I've had a few aggressive encounters for sure shared with me. But it sounds like to me that you are having some encounters that they're to me, I think it's really odd how he put his hand pointed and they came closer, and then pointed another direction and they came closer from the direction he's pointing. That's how he would know they were in that direction. And just so happened they're in that direction he's pointing at. Man, that's pretty strange right there. Whether it's some kind of hand signal, it's the right hand signal, or he kind of already had heard them or something. I don't know, hard saying. But
listen, that is a story I haven't told a lot of people, because no one's going to believe you. And I love your YouTube, and that's why I contacted you, because you're very open-minded. You're very kind with these people, and I think a lot of these people feel really good about being able to tell their story, not being ridiculed. And that is a true story. And for me, I mean, it happened for me. And you're right. It is very odd about how he pointed. And he, again, believed he could telepathically. They do telepathic things. Me and you had that discussion is, I believe, totally in biblical. Everything's biblical. Everything goes back to God for me. So whatever's going on, whatever happened that night, that did happen. I did hear footsteps on the right. No one knew we were in there. He didn't have a cell phone on him, and he had no idea where I was taking him. I'm positive of that. We never went in that area. We never went in that area together. That was the first time, and no one followed us, and we were just having a nice evening. So it wasn't like a big chore or anything we did. We just went out and had a nice evening. I mean, matter of fact, we left there and went to McDonald's and had coffee that night. And we're talking. We just talked about life after that. It wasn't always about Bigfoot. I think we got worn out about that a lot. It was just weird that he was even in the area living. You know, it was weird that we struck. I mean, he was great. And like I told you, we became friends, and he was at my wedding, and which was really neat because I told you my brother was just like, he was like, man, we grew up with that guy, and was seeing him. I go, yeah, there he is. And it was very cool. So ironic. Again, I'll tie God in with this. So ironic that, you know, we're growing up with this, and now my brother saw one, and now I'm involved in it, and now here he's at our wedding, you know, my wedding. And now me and you are talking, and to me that's divine. Things like that are divine, meant to happen, and because they're two, you can see how interwoven these situations are, and the way me and you believe and the things that we talked about are the same. And we never even met. Me and you never met, and we have these same beliefs. So that I believe that's divine.
Yeah.
One of the I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to tell you. I mean, I got a couple good stories because when we were on the show, this was a really good story. Out in Mount Rainier, the Army Rangers would train up there. They would do you know, they would be dropped off and they would do their whatever they do up there. You know, get trained and do their things, camp out at night. These are Army Rangers. Well, we're on the show, and a guy calls in, and he worked for, I think he worked for AT&T, the phone lines. He was an Army Ranger, and he was laughing. He was really laughing. He was not, you know, not hysterically. He was just laughing because, you know, he had a major experience, and he was on the phone telling us about this experience. And he was up there training as a ranger when he was younger at Mount Rainier, which it's huge for Bigfoot sightings. And he said the first night they were there, there's 2 to 3 Bigfoot that came storming in front of them while they're at their campsite, and it said it was pulling up. The guy said it was pulling up big 2-3 inch saplings and just ripping them up out of the ground and throwing a fit with these guys. And the sergeant, they said they're not going to radio it in what it is. They already know that they're up in there. This is already known. And the guy again was laughing. He said what they said, they'll report it as a bear was in their vicinity. So the next night, they watched a male Sasquatch. They had a chow line. They had pancakes already made, and I remember they were in a Tupperware thing because they watched the Sasquatch come in, open up the Tupperware, pull out a pancake, take off, eat it or whatever, and then come back and get another one. They said they watched this thing go on till they were out of pancakes. And I remember the host of the show goes, well, you guys are Army Rangers. You guys are badasses. Were you scared? And he said, yeah, we're all scared watching this go on, you know. And they said after that, when they left and they were done with doing what they had to do, they said they shut that place down for a few months and did investigations. And he said, I don't know if this is true. Again, this is a long time ago. He said, you can look that up. It was known what was going on up there. So, again, the sergeant said they're not going to radio in because it's a bear. They describe it as a bear even though they knew it was a Sasquatch.
Wow. Yeah, that's yeah, the Army they have encounters like that sometimes, but they don't want to talk about it because um they end up embarrassed about it a lot of times, and there's a few stories like that where they were training at doing training exercises and encountered them, and only a couple of them would talk privately about it because they thought it would ruin their career. Okay, if you got another story, if you would, go ahead and tell it, and then we'll kind of wrap it up for this one so we don't go over the length of what I
Oh, that's
can.
fine. What do you want me to tell you? Want me to tell you about my UFO that I saw that I waited 45 years to see?
Yeah, you can tell that if you want to.
Yeah, okay. Actually it's a comical story. Again, as a boy growing up, I wanted to see a UFO more than anybody on earth. I would lay in the driveway at nighttime on summer nights and stare up in the sky for hours upon hours, wishing and hoping to see a UFO. Nothing. I would do the same thing during the daytime, wishing and hoping to see a UFO. Let's fast forward this again. I'm 37 years old at this time. I'm in Cancun. I wrote you this. I was down there for years, and or I would go down there, each year. I go down for years, I should say. Well, one night I was with my wife. We were drinking, so this was what's comical about it. We're dancing, drinking, having a good time. Again, I wasn't sloppy. I wasn't falling all over the place. But that's the story. So we leave and we walk out to a gazebo that's on the beach. And if you've ever been in that part of the world, when you see a shooting star, you can see it, and then I can tap you on the shoulder and go, look, and you can still look up and see it shooting. They shoot forever. They just they stream out like fireworks down through the skies. It's really awesome. So we were sitting there watching the shooting stars a good 20 minutes, half an hour, and I look up and I'm looking straight up in the sky, and I see this. I thought it was a jet. I see this jet. You know how when you're looking at a jet, they're going slow in the sky, way up high. I'm watching it, and all of a sudden it does this immediate square pattern. I mean, fast, bam, 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 and then takes off the next direction. It was amazing. It was a real quick square, and then took off the other direction. So again, I'm drinking. I'm thinking, okay, I'm seeing stuff. I've been drinking, whatever. So we watched for another 5-10 minutes, watching the stars shooting. We start walking back, and as we're walking back, my wife goes, "Did you see that jet or whatever it was make that weird square and take off to the other side?" And that's when I looked at her and I started laughing. I go, "You gotta be kidding me!" I go, "We just saw a UFO." I go, "There's nothing that you can explain. We just saw a UFO." So all those years I waited and I was looking up, and yeah, that's what it did. It was absolutely incredible. I'll never forget that. There's no explanation for that. No satellite or anything. I mean, it just made a very fast square pattern and then took off the other way.
Wow.
So that's the Yucatan Peninsula. That's a hot spot for those things too.
Yeah,
They see a lot of them.
yeah, down there is for sure. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I one of my daughters seen something almost exactly like that. Except it made like a triangle, those sharp angles and stuff, and she said it would go up to like the top of the triangle shape, it was making a shape, and then go down, and then it'd cut across and back up, and it did it like 2 or 3 times, and yeah, and it was shocking to her because she was standing there with like 4 other people, and they were all looking at it, and then her friend opened up and told me about a time where one landed in the field next to a trailer house they were living in, and she was just a kid, and there was no one home at the time, and she was so scared she went underneath the trailer house and was hiding. And when she went underneath the trailer house, she heard this thing come over and hovered over the house, and then all of a sudden she was hearing footsteps in the house, and then and she was being real quiet underneath the house, and she was hearing these footsteps, and then she said then she saw the thing fly back off from hovering over the trailer out to the field, and then it took off, and she waited underneath that trailer until her parents come home later that day because she was scared to come out. And I thought, oh my goodness, could you imagine that she was underneath there and she sees this thing, it comes, hovers over the trailer, and then all of a sudden she's hearing them things walking around in the house, and then watches it. She was watching through the cracks of the siding that where they underpin the trailers, and she saw the thing fly back off to that field area and then takes off from there, and then to be scared, and wait until her parents come home before she'd come out. Man, I was like, my goodness, that's horrible. But anyway, I think we'll
yeah, terrible.
Yeah, that's a traumatic thing. I think a lot of times when we're kids, we have encounters. I've had several myself with different types of things, and even some similar Bigfoot encounters like you've had. But we want to try to make it into something else in our minds as much as we can, because we don't want to be scared about stuff like that. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up.
And I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, man. You can stay on the line if you want to.
Yeah.
But anyway, y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I think that it was some interesting stuff. How some people kind of progress through these Bigfoot experiences, and then sometimes ultimately have the visual encounter. But a lot of times you have had encounters in the woods that you didn't even know, with those huge limbs snapping and trees falling over and things like that, or things being thrown at you and you thought it was one of your friends doing it. Not always.
I'd like to add this before you really quick. I wanted to tell you this. As I told you before, as a guy like me that did this for years on end, and I would love to say I saw one, but I never did. And I know the people that are surprised by them that have seen one, and some of them are traumatizing and the aggressive ones. To me, you're extremely blessed that you got to see something like that. A guy like me would do about anything just to see one. I don't want to take a picture of it. I don't want to shoot one. I need to see one from my own eyes. So the people out there that get to see this, extremely blessed. Extremely blessed. I know it could be traumatizing, especially if they're trying to get you and you think they're going to get you. If they want you, they're going to get you unless you have a weapon. You already know this. I mean, if they're 9, 10 feet tall, they're going to get you. Yeah. So if they haven't, that means that they're not going to, in my opinion. So I just want to leave it on that. It's very fortunate to see something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And even when I was a kid, I remember playing in the cornfield out behind the house and running into circles. Perfect circles behind our house in the corn, and I had no idea that was crop circles. But I thought, wow, the tornado must have came through here and just touched down. But if you think back through your life, there's sometimes people have had some types of experiences that they can relate back, and of course I've had encounters with actual seeing things, it physically grab a hold of me kind of thing and what have you. But that's not something that everybody has happened to them, and maybe a good thing sometimes. But I hope y'all enjoyed that, and I will got some more really good stories coming for y'all soon, and I'll see you on the next video. God bless, and bye-bye.